Her scream did not sound human. It cut through the heat of that Kansas afternoon like something dying. When Elias Boone pushed open the stall door at the Miller Ranch, he did not find the horse he came to buy. He found a young woman on the dirt floor, shaking so hard the straw around her body trembled like wind through dry grass. Her legs were locked wide apart, and she kept trying to pull them together. But every attempt sent a bolt of pain through her body so sharp she cried out again. Elias froze. He had seen war wounds, broken bones, men held together by nothing but prayer. But he had never seen a woman suffering like this, alone in a quiet barn while the sun outside kept shining like nothing was wrong. She tried to raise herself on one elbow. Her voice cracked like brittle wood. She whispered, "I can't close my legs." Then she cried again, not from shame but from a pain so deep it lived in every breath she took. Elias dropped to one knee beside her. He did not touch her yet. He did not want to frighten her. He saw bruises along the inside of her thighs, red swelling where the skin had been rubbed raw, old rope marks near her ankles, signs of someone forcing her body open long enough to tear her apart from the inside out. She tried to cover her legs with trembling hands. "Please, don't leave me here. It hurts. I can't move." Elias felt something heavy settle in his chest. This was not an accident. This was not a fall. This was cruelty. Cruelty done slowly. Cruelty done by someone who should have protected her. He set his hat on the ground and spoke gently. "Ma'am, my name is Elias. I won't hurt you. Let me see what is wrong so I can help you." She nodded, barely. Her voice dropped to a ghost whisper. "My name is Hannah. Please, sir. Take me away from here. Please." Elias leaned closer, careful and steady. He reached down to support her leg just enough to check for bleeding. The second his hand touched her skin, Hannah cried out and grabbed his shirt with both hands. Her fingers dug in like a drowning person clinging to a rock. He realized then that she had been lying there for hours, maybe longer. He could feel heat radiating off her swollen skin, the kind of heat that meant infection was already taking hold. Elias Boone was not a man who walked away from suffering. He never had. And he was not about to start with this woman. He looked toward the ranch house. Diet. Empty. Not one sign of the husband she spoke of. Not one sign of any soul who cared if she lived or died. He turned back to her. "Hannah, getting you out of here to... I promise you that." Her eyes opened wider, filled with fear and hope fighting each other. She asked, voice trembling, "Sir, if you help me now, will danger follow you too?" And Elias felt the weight of that question settle on him like a storm, because he knew the truth. Yes, danger was coming. So here's the question for you. If you were standing in that barn with a woman begging for her life, and a cruel man sure to return, would you save her too? Hannah clung to Elias like she was holding on to the last solid thing in the world. Her breath came in short, painful bursts, and every time she tried to pull her legs in, she hissed in agony. Elias knew she could not stay in that barn a minute longer. So he slid one arm under her shoulders, the other beneath her knees, and lifted her as gently as a man his age could manage. She gasped, not from fear, from relief. He carried her out into the hot Kansas sunlight, her head resting against his chest, her fingers still knotted in his shirt. For a second, she squinted at the wide prairie like she had forgotten what the world looked like outside that dark stall. The wind brushed her face, a warm summer wind, and that alone made her start to cry again. Soft and shaky, Elias placed her on his horse, steadying her as she tried to sit without letting her legs touch. "Easy now. I got you." His voice was calm, the kind of voice a man earns only after a lifetime of hard years. She looked down at him. Her eyes were scared, but something else flickered there too. Something tiny, hope trying to wake up again. He mounted behind her, bracing her with both arms so she would not fall, but with every hoofbeat. Hannah breathed a little deeper. Every bump in the road made her wince, but she did not complain, not once. She leaned her head back against Elias and whispered, "You really are taking me away." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. And we are not looking back." The ride took hours, long enough for the sun to drift west and throw gold light across the plains. Elias talked sometimes, just small things, the weather, the land, stories about horses he used to break when he was younger. Nothing heavy, nothing that made her shrink, just enough to keep her awake and maybe chase off the fear that kept trying to crawl up her spine. By the time Boone Ranch came into view, Hannah was trembling from exhaustion. The white fence lines, the red barn doors, the sound of cattle from the far pasture, all of it felt unreal to her, like she had stepped into someone else's life, a life where the air did not hurt and people spoke without shouting. Elias carried her inside his house, called for old Mrs. Harper, the housekeeper, and told her to bring warm water and clean linens. Hannah tried to apologize for being a burden. He shook his head. "No, ma'am. Not one bit." He said it so simply that she believed him. For the first time in years, she let herself rest. But as she closed her eyes, one thought clawed its way back into her mind. Her husband, Caleb. He would come looking. So here's the real question. What will a cruel man do when he discovers the woman he tormented is gone? And what will Elias do when that man shows up at Boone Ranch? Ready for a fight? Hannah had only been at Boone Ranch for 2 days when trouble finally showed up. Elias saw the dust first, a long, thin trail rising over the fence line. Rider, moving fast. And not the friendly kind. Hannah was resting inside, propped up with pillows Mrs. Harper had stuffed with fresh cotton. So Elias stepped out quietly and shut the door behind him. Not wanting her to hear the angry shouts rolling toward the ranch, Caleb Miller rode straight into the yard like he owned the place. He yanked his horse to a stop, pointed a shaking finger at Elias, and barked out, "Bring my wife out here right now." His voice cracked like a gunshot. Elias did not flinch. He had been a working cowboy since he was 15, and men yelling never did much to rattle him. But the way Caleb's eyes burned, the way he spat the word wife like it was property, that stirred something hot in Elias's chest. Caleb dismounted and stormed up to him. "You took her. You stole her from me. I'm gonna drag her back myself." Elias kept his voice steady. "She is hurt. She is scared. And she went with me because she wanted to leave." Caleb sneered. "Wanted to leave? That woman is mine. She does what I say." That sentence pushed Elias past the line. He stepped forward and said, "Not today. She does not. Not ever again." Caleb shoved him. Elias shoved back harder. Caleb swung wild, landing a hard hit just under Elias' eye, opening the skin and blurring his vision. Before the hired hands could swarm him, one of the ranch cowboys ran from the barn shouting that Elias was not fighting alone today. And that was all it took for the whole thing to explode. Caleb came at him again, swinging wild, more anger than aim. While the hired hands rushed in behind him, Elias ducked, grabbed him by the front of his shirt, and slammed him into the side of the water trough. The hired hands jumped in, but Elias and the ranch cowboy moved like men with purpose. Years of ranch work had carved strength into them that these boys did not expect. Elias threw one to the dirt while the ranch cowboy yanked the other back by his collar hard enough to make him howl. Then Elias turned back to Caleb, who was scrambling up like a furious rooster. Elias grabbed him by the collar. "If you ever come near her again, you better come with a preacher, and your last words ready." Caleb backed away, shaking with rage but too scared to step forward again. He spat in the dirt, mounted his horse, and rode off shouting that this was not over. Elias stood in the settling dust, a chest heaving, knowing full well the fight had only just begun. Inside the house, behind the door, Hannah had heard enough to start trembling again. But this time she trembled for a different reason. Someone finally stood between her and the man who hurt her. And now, the real storm was coming. If you are still here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Nice and easy, so you do not miss what happens next. Grab a warm cup of tea, settle in, and tell me what time it is where you are and where you are listening from. Caleb rode off that day, but the dust he left behind never really settled. Elias knew it. Hannah knew it too. The air felt heavier, like the whole ranch was holding its breath. That evening, Elias sat at his kitchen table with a cup of black coffee. staring at the wall as if the right answer might be carved into the wood. But Elias kept thinking about Hannah resting in the spare room, finally warm, finally safe. And how all of that could be ripped away if Caleb showed up with the law at his side. He finally stood up, grabbed his hat, and said, "Mrs. Harper, keep an eye on her. I need to see an old friend." The ride into Dodge City took an hour, maybe less. Elias was riding fast, too fast for a man his age, but where he can make a horse fly. The sun was dipping low when he tied his reins outside the sheriff's office. Inside, Sheriff Cole Harding sat behind a desk stacked with paperwork he clearly was not reading. He looked up the second Elias walked in. "Well now, Boone, that is a face I only see when something bad has happened. Sit down before you fall down." Elias sat, but his jaw stayed tight. Cole listened as Elias told him everything, every ugly detail, every bruise he had seen on her. Every word Caleb had spit from that saddle earlier. Cole leaned back, chewing on the inside of his cheek the way he always did when he was trying to stay calm. "Elias, what that man did is a crime, plain and simple, but the law out here does not always work the way it should. You know that." "I know," Elias said, "but I'm not sending her back. Not while I'm breathing." Cole nodded slow. "All right. We do this proper then. We get the doctor to write out a statement. We find anyone in Abilene who ever saw Caleb raise a hand to her. We bring Hannah in when she's strong enough to talk. And we take it all to Judge Wilbur before Caleb does. For the first time all day." Elias felt a little weight lift off his shoulders, not gone, but lighter. He stood up, shook Cole's hand, and the sheriff said, "Bring her tomorrow. I will make sure the judge hears you both." Tomorrow never came. The judge postponed the hearing, saying he needed more witnesses and proper statements. So for the next 2 weeks, Elias rode back and forth between Abilene and Dodge City, talking to neighbors, gathering letters, even begging the doctor to come twice to check on Hannah and write his findings. Every night, Hannah asked if there was any progress, and every night Elias told her to hold on just a little longer. When Elias stepped back outside, the sky was turning purple, and the lamps along Front Street were flickering to life. Back at Boone Ranch, Hannah was sitting up in bed waiting for him, her hands twisted in her lap. She asked softly, "Is he coming back for me?" And Elias knew he had to tell her the truth. This fight was only getting started. "So here's the question for you. What happens when a judge in Dodge City has to choose between a cruel husband and the woman brave enough to speak against him?" On the morning of the hearing, the courthouse in Dodge City felt colder than any winter wind Hannah had ever known. She sat beside Elias, hands folded tight, breath shaking like a leaf, trying to stand still. The doctor spoke first, then a shopkeeper from Abilene, then a neighbor who had once seen Caleb yelling so loud that chickens scattered. Caleb himself was nowhere to be seen. The lawmen still had not laid a hand on him. And finally, it was Hannah's turn. She stood up slow, feet unsteady, but her voice, somehow, was steady enough to reach every corner of that room. She did not mention pain. She did not mention the worst nights. She just spoke about wanting peace, wanting safety, wanting the right to close her eyes at night without fear. When she finished, even Judge Wilbur sat there silent for a long moment. Then he cleared his throat and said the words that changed her life. Judge Wilbur announced that Hannah would receive a temporary order of protection, keeping Caleb away from her and from Boone Ranch. He explained that a full hearing would be scheduled in the coming weeks. Once more witnesses were gathered and the lawmen had time to track Caleb down. It was not the final victory, but it was the first real step toward one. The room felt brighter, lighter, almost holy. Hannah sat down, and the breath she let out was the first free breath she had taken in years. Elias looked at her and she looked back, and nothing needed to be said.
Some moments say everything without a single word. Months passed. Hannah helped in the kitchen, then in the garden, then out by the horses once her strength returned. And every evening, Elias found himself watching her laugh with Mrs. Harper, or listening to her hum while she folded laundry, and he realized something gentle but sure. She was healing, and so was he. One crisp morning, Hannah woke early, pale and dizzy, and Mrs. Harper smiled the way only older women do when they already know the answer. Later that afternoon, the doctor confirmed it. Hannah was carrying a child. When she told Elias, he went still. Then he sat down hard like someone had knocked the wind out of him. She worried he was upset, but then he chuckled under his breath, wiped his eyes, and said, "Well, I will be. Look at that. Life still finds a way." For Hannah, it was more than a child. It was proof she had never been broken. It was proof that kindness grows things cruelty never could. Far away on the prairie, Caleb eventually heard the news that Hannah was expecting. He froze, stunned that she could carry a child after all. Then his face twisted, part regret, part pure anger, as he muttered that this was not the end, and for the first time in a long time, she felt worthy of love, real love, quiet love, the kind that stays. Now let me ask you this. If you had been Elias Boone, would you have had the courage to step in when no one else would? And if you had been Hannah, would you have dared to start over when the world told you not to? If this story touched you even a little, give it a like. It helps more than you think. And go on and subscribe so you do not miss the next tale waiting down this dusty old trail. Pour yourself another cup of tea, settle in, and tell me, where are you watching from tonight? And how late is it on your side of the prairie?